Welcome back to the Fathers of Mercy here in Auburn, Kentucky on Holy Smokes. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the agony in the garden and something that happened there. In the Gospel of John, it says that Judas had brought a band of soldiers to arrest Jesus. Now, the word in Greek that they use for that band of soldiers is the word sphaira, which actually means a cohort of soldiers. Now, a cohort is actually a number of the Roman legion. And that number of the Roman legion is actually 480 men. A cohort was comprised of that amount of soldiers in the Roman army was 480 men. And so John, who was there in the agony in the garden and is giving us basically an estimate of how many men came to arrest Jesus, is saying that a whole cohort of soldiers, which means 480 men. Now, that is a lot of guys. And that kind of paints a different picture when you think of, James and John in the garden who took off, leaving our Lord, because they're not seeing just a handful of soldiers. They're seeing literally a mob and an army. But it also paints a kind of a different picture of Peter, right? Because Peter, who pulls out two swords to defend our Lord, is pulling out two swords against 480 men. That's pretty impressive. And it says a lot about the zeal of Peter, right? The fact that he would stand up for our Lord against basically a small army. And so it kind of gives you a little bit of a picture of the agony in the garden. That this wasn't just a small group of guys coming in, but really a large mob that came to arrest our Lord. And, James and John take off, but Peter is there, obviously not according to God's will to fight by the sword, but he has that willingness to stand up against all those men coming to arrest our Lord. So just to kind of give you an image of what's going on in the agony in the garden, that when they say a band of soldiers, the actual number, according to what would be the Roman army, is a cohort. And that cohort is filled with 480 men. So hopefully that helps us and brings us a little bit closer to that experience of our Lord's passion and what was going on. And once again, we will end with a blessing. Dominus Vobiscum, benedicat vos omnipotens Deus, Pater, et Filius, et Spiritus Sanctus. Amen.